welcome back to Nebula Club. So for today's video, I'll be discussing having your Mercury in the 12th house. So what is Mercury? Mercury is your logic, it's your intelligence, it's your coordination, it's your method of thinking. So when you have it in the 12th house, your intelligence and logical mind are tied or sourced from the other realm or the other side. It gives you awareness of other people's intellect, even if they're projecting what they want their intellect to appear like. You already intuitively feel and know the person's method of thinking or process of thinking on a very surface level. Having displacement makes you a receptor for otherworldly messages or messages that come from the other side. Because whatever house Mercury is placed in, that's also the house where you receive messages. You gain your intelligence and knowledge through sources of inspiration. You have this uncanny ability to be able to look at a piece of art or a movie and gain very deep insight to cultural practices, to cultural knowledge, or just basic knowledge that you normally people wouldn't understand right off the bat by looking at the picture. But people that have displacement, they're able to intuitively make connections to things that don't seem to be connected to begin with. Because you gain your knowledge through sources of inspiration, it's in a sense a win-win, because you cultivate your intelligence and you're also able to cultivate your creativity. Displacement gives you extrasensory capabilities. In the sense, you can find yourself experiencing dreams that you don't know whether they happened in reality or if they were just dreams. It can be a really frustrating experience sometimes, because you vividly and accurately remember detail by detail what happened, but you just don't know if that's a reality or not. And then whenever people tell you, for example, that it's not a reality, it can make you feel even more complicated or more lost in the way you're processing your reality, because you are 100% sure that said experience did happen. But this doesn't mean that you don't know what's going on in your daily life. It's just certain nuances similar to deja vu. Displacement, sometimes you'll find that people don't really listen to you until it's too late. Because it's almost as if you tell them, hey, or you give them advice about something, you're like, hey, common sense, like you really shouldn't do that, or something really similar, you know, really light surface, nothing too deep. And they're just like, what? Whatever. So they do the thing, and then the thing that you predicted happens, and you're just like, I told you this was going to happen. But it's almost as if they don't come into the awareness of what you said until after the experience. Because again, when your Mercury is in the 12th house, you're in a sense able to process the external circumstances and the logic behind what's going on in your reality before it even happens sometimes. Because you're able to put the pieces of how the world functions together, like this. Having displacement, you'll also find yourself repeating yourself to people a lot, because it's almost like they hear you, but they're not listening. And it can be frustrating sometimes, because you feel like you're speaking very clearly, but again, there's that whole, you know, Neptunian veil between the reality that you're expressing and the reality that is being processed by the other person. Verbal communication with displacement is often indirectly direct. So you use a lot of metaphors and allegories to say what you want to say. And another thing that is very slick and very cunning with displacement is you're able to tell someone what you want to say without ever having to say outright directly. It goes back to that whole speaking indirectly direct. There's a way, Mercury in the 12th house people have a way with words that they're able to weave and fabricate sentences and structures and words to formulate the reality that they want the other person to perceive. And if you're not careful, it can fall into the line of, you know, manipulation, obviously. So watch out for that. Having displacement gives you exceptional writing skills. In the sense, even though you may not see yourself as a writer, you have the ability to write really great, fantastic novels. And that touch on, you know, 12th house topics, such as taboo topics, you know, romance stories, sex, love, death, murder, like anything, really anything, because the 12th house is limitless. And when it comes to your handwriting, you may find that your handwriting is very inconsistent. You may not be able to write the same letter the same way twice, but if you had to copy somebody else's handwriting, if you had to copy a signature, if you had to copy any handwriting that you see, it's a lot easier for you to do it than most people. And again, it has to do with the whole elusive nature of having like such disassociative energy in the house that deals with your intellect, your logical mind, and the way you process things. You can get lost in your trance of thought. You can get lost in your notes, you can get lost in your words, you can get lost in just what you're saying, because the train of thought is flowing so much, so fast, that if you even stop and like think of what you're saying for a split second, everything just starts getting backed up and you don't even know what you want to say anymore. Funny enough, just recording this video, I've had so much trouble getting lost in my notes, but we're getting through it. Solving problems and using your knowledge to think critically is best done in solitude. It's not that you can't be in a classroom environment, but your mind works best when there is no extra sensory thing going on that distracts you. So personally, for example, for me, when I was in college, I never studied at the library. I could not study at the library to save my life, because I would think, oh, there's books over there, you know, there's people there that can get coffee downstairs, and no matter how much I isolated myself in like those tall desks with lots of walls, my mind is still able to process the reality that there's so much going on outside of this room. So for me, the way I studied was in the comfort of my home, in my study section. Whether you study in the living room, whether you study in your own bedroom or your desk, you need to be in solitude. And so more often than not, I found myself studying in the middle of the night, because everybody's asleep, nobody's gonna message me, nobody's gonna call me, my family is asleep, so it's like my mind literally just comes alive at night. And that's another thing you find with displacement. Your creativity comes alive a lot in the wee hours of the night. So you may find yourself with bouts of just staying up late, creating art pieces that you may or may not throw away in the morning, but you had that burst of creativity that you felt like you needed to bring out. Your methods to solve problems are highly, highly unorthodox, because the way your mind puts the pieces together is that it takes pieces that don't make sense at all. If you were to explain this to somebody who doesn't have displacement, you literally take pieces of the puzzle that don't make sense, that don't connect whatsoever, but some way, somehow, shape or form, you're able to find ways they connect, and you're able to make sense of it in ways that is not common, it's unconventional. And this has to do with the fact that your thinking is tied to the limitless source of, you know, the divine, the live stream, whatever you want to call that. Having displacement makes your imagination on boss level. Like, you're capable of daydreaming box office type of movies in your mind whenever you want to, however you want to. It also depends on other placements that you have, you know, that are connected to it, other aspects that it makes to it. But for the most part, having your Mercury in the 12th house, your imagination is extremely vivid and it has no boundaries. Like, that's what helps you also write extremely creative stories or make extremely creative art. Kapil Raj is a really known Vedic astrologer, and he said this about Mercury in the 12th house. He says, your intuitive mind becomes your intuitive intelligence. And that is a very perfect way to describe Mercury in the 12th house. Your intelligence comes from your intuition, because your intuition is like your compass in this life. It's like your way of just knowing things. And whenever your mind is there, I mean, you have to remember, Mercury is the planet that can go anywhere in astrology. It can go to Hades, and it can go to Pluto, and it can still come back. But if a mortal were to go to Pluto, their soul would be stuck there. But because Mercury is the ether, it's not made of like earth or anything like that, you're able to just go anywhere and everywhere, and that helps you really to navigate the external reality that you live in a lot more strategically than most. Your intelligence is on the fringe of humanity. It's on the edge of humanity. So you really have the ability to make history with whatever work you decide to produce. The future is on the edge. The future is the fringe of humanity because you're constantly pushing towards new territories, new boundaries. You're testing the boundaries, you're breaking the boundaries. So when your mind is there, you have the ability to really come up with new things that humanity and society can benefit from. Displacement, because it's in the 12th house, it's very good for overseas financial matters. It's very good with overseas financial matters if you are into being a merchant, if you are into accounting, if you are into anything that deals with money, because Mercury also deals with like merchant businesses and all that stuff, and it deals with logistics, you know, the whole nature of exchanging goods within people and society. That's a really good sector for a career. All in all, you are born with the gift of having enlightened intelligence, and it's really up to you to cultivate it, to use it, and to manifest it into the works that you do every day. Because the 12th house is your house of hidden talents, it's your house of hidden potential, and again, it's up to you to find what it is that you love, not necessarily what you're good at, because you can always practice to become good at something. But you have to find what drives you, what's your passion, what you like to think about, and bring that to the forefront. Because just like Sun in the 12th house, whenever you have any planets in the 12th house, you're tied to source. So you need to allow source energy to flow through your works in one way, shape, or form. So that concludes Mercury in the 12th house. If you have any questions or comments, comment down below. And thank you so much for watching. Till next time.